For more now, we speak to a senior researcher at the University of Cape Town's Centre for Criminology, Dr. Simon Howell. Dr. Howell, good evening to you and thank you so much for your time. Is the Commission of Inquiry that has been set up the right platform to deal with these allegations, especially in the context of the troubled past that still haunts some organs of state to date?
Good evening. I think the President took the path of least resistance by declaring a Judicial Commission of Inquiry. It appeases everyone in terms politically and is the easiest way of doing things. Frankly, I don't know if it's going to have enough impact and whether the findings will be enacted upon. I mean, we have a history in South Africa of having commissions of inquiry and little to anything is ever actually done about them. So, I mean, it really depends on whether the inquiry is left to do its work properly and whether the recommendations that it comes to are implemented in any form or cohesive manner at an operational level in SAPS.
And I suppose, there's often this argument, right, by some who say that at least we now have more information after a commission in the public domain. But what is information without accountability, one would ask?
Exactly. So, I mean, for me, I think it's a good idea to have a commission of inquiry. It's a good idea to find out more about what has occurred and to verify the allegations or to disprove them. But ultimately, there needs to be something that is tangible that comes out of that, and especially within SAPS, that ultimately has an operational arm. These issues affect the operational level of SAPS quite significantly, and their ability to provide safety and security to the country. So, unless there are outcomes at that level, then I think it's another talk shop.
And you said earlier on that the President took the path of least resistance. What could have been maybe another avenue to explore here that could have led to maybe a bit more resistance?
Well, I think, on the one hand, he could have laid criminal charges against the current police minister, or not the Chunu police minister, rather than the acting one now. They could have directed the prosecuting authority to deal with that in that way. He could have asked or engaged with Mkhwanazi and asked him to provide the evidence in a court of law. There are multiple ways of dealing with this ultimately, but a Judicial Commission of Inquiry allows for the appeasement of political ends, at least, even though it is the slowest and probably the option that is going to have the least impact.
And when you look at the SAPS, for example, and over time, I'll just take, crime intelligence and what we've seen happening there over the years. We've seen, some would argue that it's been weakened somewhat, particularly when it comes to crime fighting efforts, but at the same time would have been plagued by a litany of fights, even in the top echelons, for example, and seeing what has happened with some of the bosses over time. So, when you look at this particular work, yes, it's a commission, it's probing what's taking place right now and everything else that has been, put in the public domain currently, but what will it take to restore the image of this particular institution and at the same time even deal with some of what's been plaguing it over a decade now?
I think it would take quite a lot, to be honest. On the one hand, they need to restore the public trust and confidence in SAPS and in policing in this country as a whole. On the other hand, they need to deal with the politics of policing and to try to divide or to find a border between the politics and the actual operational logic of the police. At the moment, there seems to be a lot of infiltration by politics into the operations, which is problematic for many reasons. I think on another level, there's a discussion needs to be had about both with the public and with the police about what constitutes successful policing in this country. What do we want to see from the police, and how are we going to measure and understand whether they've been doing a good job or not? Because at the moment, frankly, I don't think we have really good metrics to understand what the impact of police is and whether they are continuing to do a good job or the vice versa, not doing a good job.
And staying with the balance of politics and operations, would you say that there has been a blurring of lines even when it comes to accounting authorities, particularly you think about the police minister and the police commissioner over time?
Exactly. I mean, I think there's a narrative and a history here of blurring those lines between the minister and the commissioner. So is that in this instance, I don't think it's even noticed when there is overreach by the minister into the operations of the police and vice versa. And that is problematic because ultimately the police and SAPS are a state institution, not a government institution, and they are supposed to be independent of and be concerned with the safety and security of the people of South Africa, not with politicians.
And I suppose it also speaks to what you've just said around the image of this particular organization, but not only the image from an outside perspective, but inward looking as well, because you do have now some of the, the members of the SAPS who themselves are described as, having low morale and simply not wanting to even report for duty given what is currently taking place or even took place over time.
It's disheartening because, I mean, there are a lot of good people in SAPS, and there are a lot of people that work very hard to fulfill their mandate. And this type of infighting and this factionism at the top level has a serious effect because of the hierarchical nature of SAPS, and that power leads directly downwards. And then ultimately, I think it undermines the confidence and ability of the police on the street to undertake their duties in a manner that is commensurate with what is applied for and what is needed.
So when you then look at the police itself, because there would be independent bodies, we speak about, for example, IPID, because a lot of questions would be asked, who's policing the police? Then people would say, no, look at IPID, of course, but also look at Parliament as well. There's the portfolio committee that is also doing its work there to try and hold the police accountable. But this issue of oversight is still one that is quite contentious. And I wonder, in your view, has it gotten better or gotten worse?
Well, frankly, I think, oversight can come in many forms, as you mentioned. And the problem is that should the blurring of lines between operations and politics occur, then a lot of oversight mechanisms are undermined or disabled. I mean, as a result, so Parliament and Parliament's ability to provide oversight is questionable when allegations have been made about the role of members of Parliament in the policing of the country. On the other hand, there is IPID, and IPID has its own history of its problems and significant issues around its status in relation to the police and in the police. So, I think any organisation that has oversight of the police needs to be fundamentally independent, and that is difficult to achieve in our present context.
Yeah, and just as a final question then, before I let you go, in the context of everything we've just discussed, how thorough does this probe, now this inquiry, needs to be, especially when you think of the length of time that it's been given?
It's going to be difficult. They have a lot of work and a lot of ground to cover. They're going to have to deal with a lot of intelligence and a lot of people that don't want to speak but will be forced to. And I think that finding levels of cooperation may be difficult. But as you mentioned, they have a very tight time frame, so one can hope that they can at least begin unraveling what has occurred, and so is that they can lay a foundation for what is ultimately criminal sanctions.
Dr. Howell, appreciate your time this evening. Thank you so much for chatting to us. That was a senior researcher at the University of Cape Town's Centre of Criminology, Dr. Simon Howell.